The destruction of the Death Star was the crowning achievement of Luke Skywalker's early life, but reflection of this event later in Luke's life caused him to believe that the Force itself had orchestrated the entire thing. Hello again, and welcome back to our archives. To say that the Force had a hand in destroying the Death Star is an obvious statement. However, Luke actually states that the Force was in far more control than we initially thought during that trench run. Many Jedi, of course, speak of the will of the Force and how it intervenes and influences them, as well as how a situation ultimately turns out. However, the will of the Force is a powerful influence and one that directs the course of galactic history, and according to this account by Luke Skywalker, we might even be able to deduce that it is against the will of the Force for any superweapon to ever exist. So, come along with us today, Acolytes of the Force, as we open up yet another holocron, and explain exactly why the will of the Force and the Force itself despises superweapons. First though, if you haven't already joined our archives, be sure to reach out with the Force and crush or push that subscribe button. It is your destiny. The Death Star is one of the worst machines of destruction to ever exist. A battle station with the ability to destroy a planet is an affront on the natural order of the Force itself, which of course means that the living Force must become involved. We learn of Luke Skywalker's opinion in Palpatine's chapter on the Book of the Sith, where Luke scrawls in the margins where Sidious had been talking about the Death Star. This is what Luke says on the matter. I may have been the one who fired that shot, but the Force itself wanted to purge the galaxy of the Death Star. It was the embodiment of everything that's wrong with the dark side. This statement comes as no surprise that the Force itself would disapprove of something that could destroy billions, if not trillions of lives in a blink of an eye. And we find this constant invisible struggle between the light and the dark sides of the Force very intriguing. The two sides of the Force seem to use the heroes and denizens of the galaxy as pieces in their war. In the era of the Galactic Civil War, the dark side was far more powerful and prevalent in the galaxy than it had ever been. And one might think that the Death Star itself was the champion of the dark side. An energy bent on destruction and chaos would certainly enjoy the token of a planet-destroying superweapon. Well, the Force itself does not actually work this way, and this is not entirely correct, as even perhaps the dark side disapproved of the Death Star. The Force must always remain in balance, and the Force was trying to correct itself in this era as Luke Skywalker was the rising threat to the Vader and his Emperor, while the dark side likely was enjoying having its influence spread across the galaxy. The Death Star was a problem, as were all other superweapons. The dark side may champion death, however, it has its limits. Believe it or not, there exist certain objects in the galaxy that bring so much death that even the dark side wants nothing to do with them. For this, we can look to the item known as the Dark Staff in Legends continuity, a weapon so powerful and so evil that the dark side itself tried and failed to destroy it. What Luke says concerning the Death Star can also be said about other superweapons. If you want proof, then let's ask this question. Why is it that all other superweapons are always hidden or destroyed shortly after they are found? Darth Revan and Malak got away with using it once or twice for militaristic purposes, but as soon as Malak glassed the surface of Taurus with an orbital bombardment, that became a problem, and the Starforge was destroyed soon thereafter. The Silent Reaper had the ability to drain the life out of an entire army, and was used in the days of the old Sith Wars by the Sith Ulic Qel-Droma. However, it was lost to history, and even though Darth Malgus searched for it endlessly, he never found the great weapon. However, it would be rediscovered in a completely different spot at some point during the Clone Wars, but then hidden away once again. And then of course, the next horrific superweapon to grace the galaxy, the Mass Shadow Generator, which requires no introduction. The Mass Shadow Generator was destroyed during the devastation of Malachor V, when Lady Dominique tried to rebuild it. However, it was destroyed once again by the Galactic Alliance leader before it could be used to devastate the galaxy one final time. These are but a small few of the superweapons that have existed, and then were promptly and conveniently disposed of. But what exactly does this mean into the relationship with the Force? And why would the dark side itself have an affront to superweapons? What is its hidden agenda? The answer to this conundrum lies in 4 deadly words. Those words are wounds in the Force. Objects with the capability to wipe out life on such a colossal scale in so quick of an instant just cannot happen without any repercussion, and the consequence of this is a wound in the Force. Wounds in the Force are a much more serious problem than people often give them credit for. All life in the galaxy was interconnected, and when a significant number of lives are suddenly ended, the Force sustained a localized injury, much like a sentient would lose a limb. The epicenter of the wound became a dark and terrible place, filled with the reverberating echoes of pain, terror, and suffering. The blinking out of all life that had moments earlier existed there in harmony. The dark side and the light side may be on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both still consist of one energy. That energy is the Force. The dark side may be chaos, but it is not death for death's sake. And while wounds in the Force may often cause the dark side to become more prevalent, it doesn't mean that it isn't still a problem. Otherwise, the dark side wouldn't care about objects and people that wish to destroy everything like the Dark Staff, Valkorion, or the Null Null. All entities and beings that the dark side itself opposed. One of the worst instances of wounds in the Force being created was of course Nihilus himself, a Sith Lord born of the Mass Shadow Generator. Nihilus was important because he was literally a walking wound in the Force, and it became a dark hole in him that threatened to consume his entire being. Nihilus joined the Sith not out of a desire for their cause, but out of a necessity so that he might use their knowledge to continuously feed his hunger, the undying hunger within himself. Nihilus would drain life out of everything and anything he could, until he grew strong enough in the Force where he could have consumed entire worlds if he desired, creating even more wounds wherever he went. The concept of wounds is why no matter how powerful they are, all those who have the desire to destroy will themselves be destroyed. So if this is the case, why then do the Sith continue to create these superweapons? Well, we have to look at how the Sith view the Force itself. The Sith are not necessarily servants of the dark side. They, on the other hand, believe that the dark side should be servants to their own will and their own power. An analogy used before, but the Force is like a river. The Jedi seek to move with it in harmony and peace, continuing the natural order of all things. And yet, the Sith seek to dominate this river, use its energies and powers for their own maleficent goals. This is the rule and paradox that comes as a result of a Force wound, and this is why the Force cannot and will not allow superweapons to exist or be used for very long at all. Luke Skywalker hit the nail on the head with his assessment. He was the one piloting the X-Wing. He may have been the one to fire the shot, but it was the Force working through him that ultimately purged the galaxy of the Death Star. And that, my friends, is why the Force itself, even the dark side, hated the Death Star. Thank you as always so much for visiting our archives, my friends and fellow students. And if you haven't yet, reach out and crush that subscribe button. We would love for you to join our order. Until next time, Acolytes, may the Force be with you.